And you might say, well, what's your evidence that those differences in personality aren't culturally constructed? And the evidence for that is quite clear. You can go online, you can look up the Scandinavian studies. Just go online and look up gender differences in personality cross-culturally. You'll find the relevant studies. They've been done with tens of thousands of people. And what they've shown quite clearly is that in those societies where the most has been done to move the social world into a position of radical equality, and so that would roughly be the Scandinavian countries, because they've done more of that than any other country, the personality differences between men and women maximize. They don't minimize. They maximize. And I'll say that again. In the countries where the most has been done to equalize the playing field between men and women get more different rather than more the same. So for all you social constructionists out there in the audience, and there's probably not that many of you because you wouldn't come and hear me talk if you were a social constructionist, you're actually wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, you know, that so one of the things you might be interested in is that it's all the same to me in some sense. Like when I was looking into this to begin with, and this would have started probably 25 years ago, looking at differences in personality between men and women, you know, it wasn't obvious at all whether they were fundamentally biological or fundamentally sociological, or what mix produced the differences. You know, no one knew. And the most logical hypothesis, really, I thought, was that as you equalize the society, that men and women would become more the same. But that is not what happened. And so we've actually put the social constructionist hypothesis with regards to gender differences in sex and personality, we put that to the test in a very intense way. And the social constructionist viewpoint failed. So it's very strange, because no one would have really believed that, right? You make society more the same and men and women get more different. It's like, what's up with that? Well, the answer seems to be is that there's fundamentally two sources of variability in personality, right? There's perhaps more, but you can categorize them as roughly genetic and roughly sociological. Well, if you take out all the sociological differences between the landscape in which men and women are raised, all you have left are the biological and genetic differences. So they maximize. Well, that's exactly what happened. This actually matters. It really matters. And this is why the demands for equity are so, well, there's about 15 reasons why demands for equity border on differences between men and women should not be overlooked. Partly because it's wrong to overlook the genuine differences between men and women. It's not good for the men, and it's not good for the women. So one of the things you see in Scandinavia, for example, is there's an overwhelming preponderance of female nurses. And there's an overwhelming preponderance of male engineers. And actually, the data on personality differences, there's the standard traits, which I'll continue to go through. I can do that quite quickly. There's not much difference in trait conscientiousness between men and women. If you break it down into the aspects, women are a bit more orderly than men, but there's no difference in industriousness. And then with regards to openness, which is the intellect creativity dimension, overall there's no difference between men and women, but if you break it up into the aspects, then the differences are actually quite pronounced. So what you have is that openness to experience is the technical trait, and it roughly breaks down into something that's sort of like creativity and aesthetic interests versus interest in ideas. And what you see is that women are a third of the standard deviation higher than men in terms of creativity and aesthetic proclivity, let's say, and men are 1/3 of a standard deviation higher than women in terms of interest in ideas. And it's not a trivial difference, and it makes a difference. So, but the biggest difference between men and women, as it turns out, and this is almost 1 standard deviation, which is a walloping difference. You never see that in social science. It's a massive difference. Is difference in interest. And the masculine interest, roughly speaking, is in things, and the female interest, roughly speaking, is in people. And that's what underlies the differences, say, in career choice preference between things like nursing and psychology and social work and that sort of thing, and engineering. And because engineering is perhaps the most male-oriented of all the disciplines, and the evidence that that's sociological is very, very weak.